1 Kings chapter 7, verse 1. Solomon also built a palace for himself, and it took him 13 years to complete the construction. Verse 2. One of Solomon's buildings was called the Palace of the Forest of Lebanon. It was 150 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high. There were 4 rows of cedar pillars, and great cedar beams rested on the pillars. Verse 3. The hall had a cedar roof. Above the beams on the pillars were 45 side rooms, arranged in 3 tiers of 15 each. Verse 4. On each end of the long hall were 3 rows of windows facing each other. Verse 5. The doorways and doorposts had rectangular frames and were arranged in sets of 3 facing each other. Verse 6. Solomon also built the hall of pillars, which was 75 feet long and 45 feet wide. There was a porch in front, along with a canopy supported by pillars. Verse 7. Solomon also built the throne room, known as the Hall of Justice, where he sat to hear legal matters. It was paneled with cedar from floor to ceiling. Verse 8. Solomon's living quarters surrounded a courtyard behind this hall, and they were constructed the same way. He also built similar living quarters for Pharaoh's daughter, whom he had married. Verse 9. From foundation to eaves, all these buildings were built from hewed blocks of high-quality stone, cut with saws and trimmed to exact measure on all sides. Verse 10. Some of the hewed foundation stones were 15 feet long, and some were 12 feet long. Verse 11. The blocks of high-quality stones used in the walls were also cut to measure, and cedar beams were also used. Verse 12. The walls of the great courtyard were built so that there was 1 layer of cedar beams between every 3 layers of finished stone, just like the walls of the inner courtyard of the Lord's temple with its entry room. Verse 13. King Solomon then asked for a man named Hiram to come from Tyre. Verse 14. He was half Israelite, since his mother was a widow from the tribe of Naphtali, and his father had been a craftsman in bronze from Tyre. Hiram was extremely skillful and talented in any work in bronze, and he came to do all the metal work for King Solomon. Verse 15. Hiram cast 2 bronze pillars, each 27 feet tall and 18 feet in circumference. Verse 16. From the tops of the pillars, he cast bronze capital, each 71 by 2 feet tall. Verse 17. Each pillar was decorated with 7 sets of lattice work and interwoven chains. Verse 18. He also encircled the lattice work with 2 rows of pomegranates to decorate the capitals over the pillars. Verse 19. The capitals on the column inside the entry room were shaped like water lilies, and they were 6 feet tall. Verse 20. The capitals on the 2 pillars had 200 pomegranates in 2 rows around them, beside a rounded surface next to the lattice work. Verse 21. Hiram set the pillars at the entrance of the temple, one toward the south and one towards the north. He named the one on the south Jachin and the one on the north Boaz. Verse 22. The capitals on the pillars were shaped like water lilies, so the work of the pillars was finished. Verse 23. Then Hiram cast a great round basin, 15 feet across from rim to rim, called the sea. It was 71 by 2 feet deep and about 45 in circumference. Verse 24. It was encircled just below its rim by 2 rows of decorative gourds. There were about 6 gourds per foot all way around, and they were cast as part of the basin. Verse 25. The sea was placed on a base of 12 bronze oxen, all facing outward. 3 faced north, 3 faced west, and 3 faced south, and 3 faced east, and the sea rested on them. Verse 26. The walls of the sea were about 3 inches thick, and its rims flared out like a cap, and it resembled a water lily blossom. It could hold about 11,000 gallons of water. Verse 27. Huram also made 10 bronze of water carts, each 6 feet long, 6 feet wide, and 41 by 2 feet tall. Verse 28. They were constructed with side panels, brassed with crossbars. Verse 29. Both the panels and the crossbars were decorated with carved lions, oxen, and cherubim. Above and below the lions and oxen were wrought decoration. Verse 30. Each of these carts had 4 bronze wheels and bronze axles. There were supporting posts for the bronze basins at the corners of the cart. These supports were decorated on each side with carvings of wrought. Verse 31. The top of each cart had rounded frame for the basin. It projected 11 by 2 feet above the cart's top like a round pedestal, and its opening was 21 by 4 feet across. It was decorated on the outside with carvings of wrought. The panels of the cart were square, not round. Verse 32. Under the panels were 4 wheels that were connected to axles and had been cast as one unit with the cart. The wheels were 21 by 4 feet in diameter. Verse 33. And were similar to chariot wheels. The axle spoke, rims, and hubs were all cast from molten bronze. Verse 34. There were handles on each of the 4 corners of the cart, and these too were cast as one unit with the cart. Verse 35. Around the top of each cart was a rim 9 inches wide. The corner supports and side panels were cast as one unit with the cart. Verse 36. Carvings of cherubims, lions, and palm trees decorated the panels and corner supports wherever there was room, and there were rafts all around. Verse 37. All 10 water carts were the same size and were made alike, for each was cast from the same mold. Verse 38. Huram also made 10 similar bronze basins, one for each cart. Each basin was 6 feet across and could hold 220 gallons of water. Verse 39. He set 5 water carts on south side of the temple and 5 on the north side. The great bronze basin called the sea was placed near the southeast corner of the temple. Verse 40. He also made the necessary wash basins, shovels, and bowls. So at last Huram completed everything King Solomon had assigned him to make for the temple of the Lord. Verse 41. The 2 pillars, the 2 bowl-shaped capitals on top of the pillars, the 2 network of interwoven chains that decorated the capitals. Verse 42. The 400 pomegranates that hangs from the chains on the capital, 2 rows of pomegranates for each of the chains networks that decorated the capitals on top of the pillars. Verse 43. The 10 water carts holding the 10 basins. Verse 44. The sea and the 12 oxen under it. Verse 45. The ash bucket, the shovels, and the bowls. Huram made all these things and burnished bronze for the temple of the Lord, just as King Solomon had directed. Verse 46. The king had them cast in clay mold in the Jordan Valley between Succoth and Zarethan. Verse 47. Solomon did not weigh all these things because there were so many. The weight of the bronze could not be measured. Verse 48. Solomon also made all the furnishings of the temple of the Lord, the gold altar, the gold table, the bread of the presence. Verse 49. The lampstand of solid gold, 5 on south and 5 on the north, in front of the most holy place. The flower decorations, lamps, and tongues, all of gold. Verse 50. The small bowls, lamp snuffers, bowls, ladles, and the incense burners, all of solid gold. The doors for the entrance of the most holy place, and the main rooms of the temple, with their fronts overlaid with gold. Verse 51. So Solomon finished all his work on the temple of the Lord, and he brought all the gifts his father David had dedicated, the silver, the gold, and the various articles, and he stored them in the treasuries of the Lord's temple. Amen.